When I was a teenager, I was introduced to the world of creator-owned comics by Invincible and The Walking Dead. A good chunk of my teen years were spent reading Robert Kirkman's stories. I still remember watching the very first episode of The Walking Dead when it aired, and later wondering when Invincible would get its own adaptation because an animated series seemed like such a slam dunk. Fast forward 12 years, and it's here. Both Invincible and The Walking Dead are now solidly in the mainstream, which has opened them up to all sorts of cross-media opportunities, including video games. While The Walking Dead has infamously struggled outside of the Telltale games, Invincible is off to an impressive start with the recent release of Invincible Presents Adam Eve. Today, I want to talk about Adam Eve, and why this visual novel RPG hybrid was the perfect choice for the series' debut in a new medium. This is Adam Eve, Invincible's first video game. So, you might be asking, why a visual novel? When you see or read Invincible, you'd probably think it'd best be suited for an open world game like what Insomniac has done with Spider-Man. The issue is that open world games take a lot of time and money to make, and if a AAA Invincible game is in the works, it'd likely only be in its first or second year of production, given that the first season of Invincible aired in 2021. A visual novel, on the other hand, can be produced much faster for far less money, and in the case of Adam Eve, the visual novel genre also plays to the strength of Invincible's characters and the mediums they come from. Simply put, Adam Eve makes you feel like you're playing a comic book. Something I always loved about Invincible was how many of its characters were so interesting and well-rounded that they could be the stars of their own series. Adam Eve capitalizes on this and puts us in the shoes of Samantha Eve Wilkins as she goes through her last year of high school. The appeal of a superhero game is always superhero agency. We want to do what superheroes do, and this is typically manifested and enjoyed by the player in the form of combat. Adam Eve is a visual novel RPG hybrid. So while it does have superhero combat, a lot of the player's control also comes from deciding how Eve reacts to everything going on around her. Eve is still very much her own character, but the player finds her voice in the decisions they have her make and how her attitude affects the outcomes of situations. Adam Eve starts by introducing us to its dialogue and turn-based combat systems. Eve's unique responses in conversation are tied to her fighting style. So if you make Eve's build damage-based, her dialogue is incendiary. The same applies to the game's other two styles, where Eve will either attempt to defuse situations or create other solutions using her powers. The story of Adam Eve is pulled from both the Invincible show and comic events that haven't been adapted yet. This means you'll see familiar characters and a familiar arc for Eve, but the game uses a combination of these storylines to create a narrative with tangible choices. The game takes you through Eve's home life, her school life, her superhero life, and her love life, all of which the player helps her navigate. For example, Eve's love interest in this game is decided entirely by the player. You can be totally indifferent to both Rex and Mark, or choose to pursue either of their romances. In the same vein, Eve can befriend characters like Amber, and you can even try to work on Eve's relationship with her parents by obeying them and doing your best to apply to college like they want her to. The game manages to create a lot of player choice out of a storyline with only one outcome in the original comic, but what's most impressive is that it never has out-of-character moments despite so many choices. Everything Eve can say or do is something you could see her doing in the show or book, which helps the game because she remains a very likable and relatable character. The game's supporting cast also behaves exactly as you'd expect them to, and you're going to see many of the franchise's characters in a new light because of the game's inherent interactive nature. Though Adam Eve does have a large focus on story, it's also a turn-based RPG, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun the game's enemy encounters are. Each fight has Eve starting out with an amount of energy that she can use on attacks or defensive abilities. abilities. You can do various things in one turn provided you have the energy, but if not, you pass your turn. The best thing about Adam Eve's combat is that you can see which moves the enemies are about to do. Once you gain additional starting energy and have plotted out your build a bit more, the game becomes considerably more tactical. If you see that an enemy is about to use a high damage laser attack, you can use the Stunflower ability to lower their long range accuracy. If you see that a melee attack is coming, you can use the Gum ability to immobilize enemies for a number of turns. Or you can put up a shield to soak damage for a turn or two. Enemies can put up shields too, and this makes you prioritize certain targets so you don't get overwhelmed. Eve also has passive abilities, like the effects of certain moves lasting for longer, or those that add bonuses to her overall stats. She can be very evasive, and if you equip the right skills, she can also counterpunch enemies. I wasn't expecting this amount of depth from the game, and I ended up doing all of its optional combat encounters. Throughout Adam Eve, you'll be fighting Kill Cannon, the Mauler twins, Doc Seismic, and Universa, who all have their own unique styles and have to be approached differently. Something else I wasn't expecting this game to have was any form of New Game Plus. Thankfully, once you beat Adam Eve, you get to start all following playthroughs with 5,000 bonus XP to spend however you'd like. This means that Eve will be even stronger in subsequent playthroughs because the bonus XP lifts her level cap. I really enjoyed my time with Adam Eve. It's a very short game, but for $10, I got my money's worth. A visual novel won't be for everyone, but fans of the genre and those willing to try it out should walk away satisfied because it's just a great game at its core. Before I go, the last thing I want to talk about in regards to Adam Eve is the importance of accommodating a game studio's core competencies. Adam Eve was developed by Terrible Posture Games, who have previously developed titles of similar scope and presentation. Before Adam Eve, Terrible Posture made 3 out of 10, an adventure game where you play as a game developer in a struggling studio. It's a hilarious game and very well made, but the reason I bring this up is because Invincible games going forward need to be made with the same considerations. The games industry is notorious for thinking that any team can make any game, despite a lack of experience, time, and money. This is what often leads to bad games, and licensed games are no stranger to this mindset. Terrible Posture was a great fit for this type of game, and I'm happy to say that they've done Invincible's characters and the series as a whole justice. I love Adam Eve for being a unique superhero experience, and I can't wait to see what's next for Terrible Posture and Skybound's future Invincible games. Thanks for watching.